Our Torah portion this Shabbat bears the title of the great villain of the Torah portion, the great villain of the Torah altogether, Korach. Korach leads a rebellion against the leadership of Moses and Aaron. The rebellion is outlined in our Torah portion that covers chapters 16 through 18 of the book of Numbers. The people are ripe for rebellion. As we read last Shabbat, they refuse to go up into the Promised Land after 10 of 12 scouts sent to the Promised Land come back with a false report and arouse the insecurity, the fear of the people at large. God is outraged. This becomes the final straw in the sad saga of the Jewish people in their journey through the wilderness. A journey from Sinai to the Promised Land that could have and should have taken only a few weeks ends up taking 38 plus years. Why? Because the people rebelled against God's leadership last Shabbat. God condemns them then to perish in the wilderness. So this sets the stage for this Shabbat's Torah portion. Korach approaches Moses and says, "You have taken too much upon yourself. After all, the entire people of Israel are holy." It is a shrewd and powerful argument. It is the kind of political rhetoric that held broad appeal to the people at large. But the deeper truth is that Korach was only serving his own self-interests, his own self-aggrandizement. Korach really didn't care about the people at large. All that he cared about was he himself supplanting Moses and Aaron as leaders in Israel. Moses understands this very well. And it's interesting to note that Moses' leadership ultimately is vindicated with the following relative statistics. In Exodus, when the people rebel against God's leadership by fashioning the golden calf, in the end, some 6,000 people are punished. Here now in Numbers, when the people rebel against Moses' leadership, some 14,700 people are punished, along with Korach and his immediate followers. What the Torah suggests is that it is far worse to rebel against God's designated human leadership than it is to rebel against God, God's self. And the punishment for this rebellion against human leadership is far, far harsher than against rebellion against God. I think there's much to be learned in our Torah portion for our world today. It might be said that for decades now, there has been an ongoing American civil war, just as Korach sought to foment civil war among the Israelites in the wilderness. This American civil war wages between Republicans and Democrats. It hasn't been pretty. It hasn't been pleasant. And we must ask if it has served the best interests of our nation altogether. I would propose then that we learn from Korach how we might listen to the candidates in the coming months as the national election gathers to a head. We have to listen carefully to see what is rhetoric that addresses our true needs as opposed to rhetoric that simply arouses our passions. We have to examine the candidates to discern if their interests are our interests, or if their interests are for only their self-interests, their self-aggrandizement. There is much to be learned from Torah, even about politics. We might say that if not for the Jewish people's innate sense of politics as expressed through Torah, we might still be slaves in Egypt. So, may we learn today not to become slaves to self-serving rhetoric of self-aggrandizing politicians, descendants of Korach, who would lead us astray. Come study Torah with us at Temple Emmanuel. Shabbat Shalom.